Mental Living Show. I'm here with Dr. Garcia, who is a pelvic floor physical therapist. We're going to talk about what pelvic floor therapy actually is and all the problems it can solve. So, Dr. Alexia Garcia, welcome.
Hi, nice to be here.
So, I wanted to have you on here today because I love pelvic floor physical therapists. I had a really great experience. It was prior to me meeting you. And I had a really great experience. And I'm like, people need to know about this. So that was one of the main things I wanted to ask you today is to explain what is pelvic floor physical therapy?
So first of all, that makes my heart so happy. I mean, not to be biased or anything, but I feel like everybody who has experienced pelvic floor physical therapy says the same thing. It's one of those things that a lot of people don't know what it is, but once they go through it because they need it, they realize how important it is and how everybody should know what pelvic floor physical therapy is. So pretty much in a nutshell, so pelvic floor physical therapy, or really pelvic floor therapy, because you can have pelvic floor therapy that isn't physical therapists. You can have occupational therapists that do it as well. But basically, it's therapy focused on the pelvis, so the pelvic floor muscles, which, it's a group of muscles that everybody has, men and women. And it's a huge part of our body. It helps support our organs. It helps, with circulation. It helps us with, obviously, bowel and bladder movements. It helps with sexual function. So if any one of these things if the pelvic floor isn't working properly, any one of these things is basically going to fall apart. So it's a huge deal and it affects people in very serious ways. So we basically work with this muscular system, which also involves the core, it involves the lower extremities, the glutes, to basically just provide health again for this system that really, when it just doesn't work properly, it affects people in a really crazy way. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's so cool. And I know people are super familiar with traditional physical therapists, right?
Yes.
For injury, for example, if you had surgery on some part of your joint, you probably need a physical therapist to rehab you back. Or if you had some sort of unresolved something going on in your body, right?
Yes.
And so tell me a little bit about the schooling that you did for physical therapy, but also the specialty in which you did.
Yeah, so obviously, so for physical therapy, you do go to school for it. You have your undergrad experience, and then you also get your doctorate. So it's 3 years after undergrad. The unfortunate thing is that pelvic floor physical therapy, like this side of this niche really in physical therapy, it's barely touched upon in our curriculum.
Right?
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. So basically, if this isn't something that was included in your curriculum, usually you don't even know that you're interested in it until maybe you have an experience in it, or you're talking to someone, like let's say we're speaking to you and you tell me about it and I'm curious about it and I start digging into it. So in my case, that's kind of how it started, that I basically just started recognizing how really underserved just women's health is, just women are in our society, how women during pregnancy don't get the support that they need, women during the postpartum period don't get the support that they need, and then really just these issues of, they're almost like bad words, like incontinence and prolapse.
Yes, oh my gosh.
And pelvic
super
pain.
Common, right?
Super common. It's so common, and I think it's just, people just don't like to talk about it, so we just don't realize how common it is. But basically, that's how I just kind of came across it. So I basically then from there signed up for extra coursework on the side. So I'm already graduated at this point. I have, a job doing another piece of, physical therapy. I was actually in neurology at the time. So I start learning how to assess the pelvic floor, learn how to treat the pelvic floor, and then in my case, I specialize in pregnancy and postpartum. So then I started taking extra coursework for obstetrics. So yes, I am a pelvic floor physical therapist, but then I specialize even more into treating an even niche down population of pregnancy and postpartum. So it was extra.
Which is how we connected, right?
Yes.
I think we were introduced by a mutual friend, and I didn't know too much, honestly, about pelvic floor physical therapy. And it's so crazy how necessary it is a lot of the time, because a lot of people think you have to have issues to actually address stuff, which is what I wanted, which is why you're here today, for people to know more about this. So I myself, like I mentioned, I had a really cool experience in the assessment of pelvic floor physical therapy. It's actually really cool, right?
Love it.
And for me, I luckily don't have any issues with that. And as I've gotten checked out, they're like, no issues, right?
Perfect.
But for someone who likes to lift like I do, oh my gosh, you notice all the things that are not engaging properly in the pelvis. And I'm like, this is really helping like cue my breath with how I lift. And so all those sorts of things. And so I wanted to ask you very specifically, because I know you niche down to pregnancy, right, and postpartum.
Yes.
But there's multitudes of other ways. So how can you help, for example, a woman prep for their labor? And you can even expand on that and tell more people.
Well, so first of all, I mean, I recommend for any woman to at least to go to a pelvic floor therapist even once. Like, that was great that you did that, because you basically learn, oh, this is a pelvic floor contraction and this is a pelvic floor relaxation. Like, that's like if we're walking around our lives not knowing how to contract our elbow and how to extend our elbow. Yeah, so it's one of those basic things that we should learn how to do. And I've just seen women, unfortunately, compared to men, we're more predisposed to have some sort of issue down the road, pelvic floor wise, whether it's now, pregnancy, postpartum, or menopause. Like, it's going to get you at some point. So it's better to just know now how to take care of your pelvic floor and just know what it's doing during certain moments of your life. Like, lifting is a huge one.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So that's like
Lifting's
the first thing. Like, for sure, everybody should get at least one session, just as like an educational session, just to learn about this body part that's so important. But then in my case, so then during pregnancy, I usually recommend for women to come at least one time, even if they're not having issues, for that same reason, just to understand what are these changes. Yeah, like, what are these changes? Like, you have a baby now sitting on your pelvic floor, so your pelvic floor is it's predisposed to just increased load, increased pressure.
Yes. I remember we did a class months ago at the yoga studio.
Yes.
And you said something like the pelvic floor is made up of like slings and some other thing.
Sphincters.
Yeah.
Slings and sphincters.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So
I love that.
So pretty much, like, people think the pelvic floor is like one muscle, when really,
I
like,
wish you had
I wish I had my model. I always bring my model. Like, I literally, that was a joke I had at the time. Like, I even brought my book bag. Yeah. So like, the pelvic floor, it's a system. So there's a lot of different muscles that compose this system. Some are like sling looking, so those are the ones that provide that support to keep everything kind of like up, right? And then we have our sphincteric muscles that, they surround the orifices, and they're the ones that help to control certain, functions, right? So both of those are equally as important, and it's not really possible to isolate each one. But again, it's just good. You have it in your body, so it's good to know that these things exist. And when something is going wrong, like, what is it exactly that's going wrong? So during pregnancy, I educate my moms on that. I educate them on what exactly the system is, how to keep it healthy during pregnancy. If something were to be going wrong during pregnancy, like, this is the reason why. And honestly, sometimes during pregnancy, there's only so much you can do, because you have a baby that's just going to keep growing. Uterus is going to keep growing. But, you can at least understand what's happening and, take some steps to either try your best to fix it during pregnancy, or at least start already taking steps for postpartum to be able to fix it. So, so that's like at least one session, as even if like they don't have anything wrong, I like for them to come in so they learn these things. Then one thing that's super important that it's honestly my favorite session is birth preparation. So this is when women come in. So I have a lot of women that they think, oh, I'm ready for labor. I've been working out my entire pregnancy. I'm good to go. So that's
pelvic floor therapy is so different than
and it's true in a way, right? Because I have a lot of women that they are really strong, like, they don't have any issues during their pregnancy. But then at a certain point, which for me, it's like that 35, 36 week mark, like, you actually should be switching gears to, instead of strengthening, you should be relaxing. Because remember, the pelvic floor has a contraction phase and a relaxation. So now you need to learn how to relax things. So I have some moms that they were doing great during pregnancy, but then labor happens and they actually had a stalled labor, or they ended up having to have an emergency C-section because the baby just couldn't get out because they didn't learn how to relax properly. So this session, I basically teach them now the opposite. Like, okay, you've been contracting, that's great. Now we need to learn how to relax, like, everything. Nice
tension in the
stretch,
muscle, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that I have the husbands come in. I love like having the birth partners come in, because like they need to know these things. I basically help. They help. Like, and they should know these things. They also have pelvic floors. So,
oh my gosh, right? Men have pelvic floors.
They have pelvic floors. You don't understand. Does. I have men come in that they, because I see also men for prostate issues. issues, and they're like, I don't have a pelvic floor. I'm like, yes, you do.
Everybody does.
That's a pelvic floor. Like, if you have like bowel and bladder function, you have a pelvic floor. So, yeah, I teach them ways to support, the mom that's giving birth. I go over like birthing positions, and then I also go over like the way that the pelvis kind of changes depending on like each stage of labor, which is like,
you have to see this Instagram because you made a post about this.
Yeah, it's like nitty gritty in biomechanics, so it's a little complicated, but this is the second model that I have. I have multiple, so if I could have brought my second model, I would have been showing this.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's very complicated, and it's just something that just like athletes like prep for their tournaments and like their games, like you need to prep for labor. It's like it's not something that should just be taken lightly. Exactly. Yeah, and people go through injuries because of it and things like that. So if you can take the steps to perhaps, it's not guaranteed, but perhaps prevent injury, why not take it? So,
oh my gosh,
so basically people's minds are blown when they go to that session, because it's like, wow, like I needed to know this,
So when I had a conversation, I mean, I know several now in this area, but we have a conversation like, oh my gosh, they need to know, this is one of the things, because it's not just for right now, it's also for later on, right?
Yes.
When you're doing this work now, especially, it helps you a lot for later on.
100%. Yeah.
And so I want to make sure we make the distinction, because you're talking about vaginal delivery with women. And I also want people to know that you can also help them if they have a scheduled C-section or have had a C-section.
Oh gosh, yes.
Please talk about that.
Yes. So people think that, oh my gosh, like I'm either, which
I don't need her because I'm having a C-section.
Which first of all, like if you're planning on a C-section, that's totally fine. Like no judgment there. People have their reasons for it. Totally understand.
Your choice.
But
your choice,
exactly.
Right?
Your choice. And I've definitely met multiple moms that they really had valid reasons for choosing a C-section over vaginal. But they also, a lot of people think that a C-section is going to save them from like the trauma that is a vaginal birth. When really,
oh my gosh, right?
Yeah, it's like they think that trauma. But the thing is that pregnancy in and of itself is, it's all load on the pelvic floor. So you're not skipping that part, right? You're only skipping the actual like labor and delivery part. So I tell my moms, like after a C-section, like if you experience these issues like incontinence and prolapse, it's a thing, because it's pregnancy that caused it, not the labor and delivery part. So your pelvic floor is still a little bit too lax now. It's too weak now because of pregnancy, not labor and delivery. So it's still important.
I also learned that there's different stages of the prolapse.
Yes, there's different stages of prolapse.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
prolapse is a whole falling out. Well, prolapse, yeah,
that
prolapse.
Sounds terrible. I'm
yes,
sorry.
no, but prolapse is one of those things that when moms come to me, honestly, in a panic because of it, it's honestly really sad because of this lack of awareness of like there's different stages, because like prolapse, again, it's this like bad word, and they think that, oh my God, prolapse. It's basically, again, I wish I had my model. Yeah. So it's basically, a lot of people think that it's literally your vagina falling out, when really what it is, it's, again, think like you have all these organs that are sitting on top of your pelvic floor. So when your pelvic floor is weak, right, that's one of the functions of it, it's support. So it's supposed to keep everything up. Yeah, the slings. Yes. So when, like, for example, let's say there's different types of prolapse, but let's say like an anterior prolapse is called a cystocele. Cyst means bladder. So the part of the pelvic floor where the bladder sits on is weak. So it basically, I kind of attribute it to like a hammock. So it's like you're sitting on a hammock and the strings on either side of the tree are weak, right? Or they're, well, in this case, they're loose, right? So like you start to sag down towards the floor. So it's basically the bladder that's basically sinking in, and the vagina is basically just like sinking down, right? Yep. And then there's different stages depending on how far down it actually goes. So, for the most part, most prolapses are 100% treatable with conservative care. You do not need surgery for the majority of prolapses. Like that is one thing. Yes, like please don't go try to get like a mesh or something like for like a stage 1, stage 2 prolapse. Like you're actually going to have, it's super common. It's super common. Like, oh my gosh. And it has like a really high re-surgery rate. Like you have to just go right back in and just put it back in again.
Because you're not fixing the issue,
You're not fixing the issue. I mean, it's like a patch really, which I would say like there's case by case, scenarios. And I tell my moms like, look, at least try this out first. And yes, if you're putting in the effort and it still doesn't feel better, I mean, there's other options too. There's something called pessaries that, if you want me to get into that, we can. Basically, there's other options out there I do see postmenopausal women too, and
yes,
those, unfortunately, because
because
unfortunately those, like, they're usually further along because they probably have been dealing with this for a very long time. And I think we're super lucky that we're in a generation right now that we know about these
and
things.
We're super curious. Too.
Exactly.
Like, what is that?
Because for them, it was like ignored. So now they have a stage 3, stage 4 prolapse. And by the time it's at that point, there's only so much you can do to strengthen the pelvic floor to push everything back up.
Yep.
But stage 1, stage 2, I
Easily
have high
treatable.
success. Yeah, like it's great. Like, and they're so relieved because they come in at first like panic, like my life's over. Like, I can't exercise. Like I can't do anything because like they see it. It's scary. And it's actually like really treatable, and it's honestly really easy. And half of it is just, again, like that initial learning how to contract your pelvic floor.
Yes.
It's I feel like the biggest thing that I do, like 60-70%, is just that first session teaching them, like, this is what it takes to contract, and this is a relaxation.
Yep.
So just be aware of that, and your symptoms will start to get better, and they do. So
that was the one thing that was mind blowing to me, because when people think pelvic floor, they just think do Kegels.
Yes. Okay. It's one of as pelvic floor therapists, it's like such a pet peeve of ours. It really is. Because they just think like, oh, just do Kegels. And
talk about that. It's not always need to be tightened.
No. And so honestly, first of all, studies show that people who are told to just go home and do Kegels, they do them wrong. Like, chances are you're doing Kegels wrong. You're not even actually doing Kegels. Because Kegels, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a pelvic floor contraction. It's just a fancy way. It's named after the guy that, like, coined, like, this is a pelvic contraction. I'm going to call it a Kegel under my name. So it's just a pelvic floor contraction, which, like, there's nothing wrong with that. What we as pelvic floor therapists have an issue with is prescribing everybody Kegels, because it's the same as any other muscle in our body. Like, you can have weakness, but you can also have tightness, right? So nobody talks about the tightness. I feel like I'm seeing it more and more now, and more people are becoming aware of it.
Oh my gosh.
But if you're already tight, right, which, like, it's basically, again, if I use like a bicep analogy, it's like this. Yeah, like tight. It's tight and weak, but you have to, if someone comes into your clinic like this, you're not getting them a dumbbell and start having them do bicep curls, right? Like, that just doesn't make sense. Like, it just doesn't make sense. So you want to, like, relax it first to get a good contraction. Same thing with the pelvic floor. So first, like, we assess and we determine whether it's tight or weak. If it's tight, first thing you have to do is lengthen the muscle out. So you actually learn what we call down training, which is relaxing, lengthening the pelvic floor. Then we start getting into contractions, because, it's not all the time. I do see some women who they're tight and they're actually extremely strong. But for the most part, if you're walking around like this all day, it's probably weak too. So
I have
then the
noticed
Kegels
that.
come.
Yeah. I have noticed I have a theory about what it is. I think it's stress.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Stress
Nervous
is
system.
stress. Most women that come to see me that have the tension part of things, it's systemic. Yep. It's up to down. And there are studies showing now that, like, jaw tension has things to do with the pelvic floor. It's insane.
Which is actually what I talk about a lot in my practice is, so people will come in and they'll have TMJ issues and, like, chronic headaches, those sorts of things.
Yes.
And they'll be like, well, I already went to a chiropractor for like 10 million years or whatever. And I'm like, did they ever address your sacral area, not just your lumbar spine, but your sacral area? They'll say, no, they never touched my sacral area or my low back. Yeah. And so it's both related.
Yeah.
Right?
People hold tension in the shoulders. They can hold tension in the jaw. They can hold tension in the pelvic floor area. So yeah, you have to.
Super connected.
You have to. It's all connected. Like, if you're just looking at one isolated piece of the body, you're doing it wrong. That's why people think, like, when they come to us too, it's all just like pelvis.
Here, yeah.
And they're like, why are you looking at my glutes or like my leg strength or my core strength? It's like, because they literally are all interconnected. Mm-hmm. So yeah, pelvic floor tension is a thing. Kegels should not be just blindly prescribed, or if you see just on Instagram, just somebody saying do Kegels, like, please don't do that. Like, go see somebody first and assess and make sure, because you can make it worse. Like, you can have prolapse and incontinence and actually have a tight pelvic floor that's weak. Yes. And now you're making it worse, right? Exactly. Like, so
I always tell people about that with social media. It's great, right? We love social media.
It's
sure.
Yes.
But it's a gateway thing, and most people kind of take it as the word, and then they do whatever it says, but it's like, it doesn't really apply to you because you didn't get a personalized assessment.
No.
That,
and I would say that if I could give like one piece of advice for Instagram knowledge, it's look at the profile and see the credentials first before you blindly start following instructions from somebody, because pelvic floor health is such a big thing now that I see it everywhere. But I'm seeing like when I click on people's profiles, they're like personal trainers that are talking about pelvic floor therapy. And I'm like, this is not
even a specialty.
Yeah. It's like, this isn't just like something that you can just start talking about. Like you have to truly understand it. So, you know, I'm not pretending to be like a medical doctor and start giving advice about, you know, like renal function, you know, like, you know, everybody's stay in their lane. But it's definitely one of those tricky points where it's good information out there. I think the
good
like pelvic
information.
Pelvic floor health has never been on people's minds more, which is great because I think social media, but at the same time, like just be careful and definitely if you feel like you need pelvic floor therapy, like get assessed first. Like that's
I'm
what we
all
ask.
about the assessment.
So,
I'm like, why do people bypass that? You want to know a baseline, you want to know where you're at. It's like, no, you don't get an Instagram assessment. It can't. I have the same challenges also. It's like, you know, I go to this place, they didn't do anything, and then they cracked me. I'm like, wow, that's crazy.
Red flag. Yeah, definitely red flag.
Exactly that.
But people don't know any better. It's up to us to
tell people.
So
then I wanted to ask, so with C-section specific, let's touch on that really quick. What are some things you do for them? Because a lot of women, by the way, in Florida, the C-section rate is really high.
Yep.
So I want women to know specifically about this for them to recover. So.
Yes, I love that. So, so the first thing is I actually was trying for quite a bit of time. I used to work at a specific hospital. I'm not going to say the name, but I basically tried to start a physical therapy program in the maternity ward there because the moms there were the only ones that weren't being seen by physical therapists to basically just mobilize, get them out of bed, like start moving. But then aside from that, what bothered me even more was that the moms that had C-section. So first of all, C-section is a major abdominal surgery. Like it's not major. Like if you like look up a video of a C-section, if you don't understand how, it's insane. Like it is a major abdominal surgery. So it's like
not to be taken lightly, please.
And like any major abdominal surgery, you need to learn how to take care of yourself after this type of surgery. So in our hospital system, really, it's not just the hospital I worked for, it's really every hospital. We would get orders to see really anybody after any abdominal surgery, whether it's gastric sleeve or something else, hysterectomies, right? But then for some reason, the C-section moms, like they basically got no therapy and they were basically just like given a baby and sent home, right? So no instruction. Super common. So no instruction on how to protect their abdominals, how to for the simple things. So how to roll out of bed, how to like brace your core, how to use a pillow to like, you know, hug and brace your core in order to decrease pain and to, you know, basically protect the incision site. So none of those things were taught to them, and that really bothers me. So one of the things,
me too, man.
It's awful. It's awful. And I mean, always the pushback I got was just that we don't have enough therapists to send over there. I'm like, well, you know, then we need to allocate resources better because this is not okay. But basically, one of the sessions that I do right at the beginning, so I can do this as early as literally the day they get discharged home because they should have gotten this at the hospital. Mm-hmm. I basically just go over to moms' houses and it's a 30-minute session and I basically teach them the basics, like how to get out of bed. So you're log rolling, right? Instead of twisting, you're not using your core, never crunching forward. Yes. Picking up your baby, like don't use your back and don't use your core, use more of your legs, right? And when you use your core, you have to brace properly. So I teach them the basics for all of these things and I basically just let them recover. And then I have them usually come in about a month out, I would say. They can come a little bit earlier if they want, but honestly, things are crazy at that point. So I'm like, you know, just heal, do your thing, and then we'll come in and we'll start truly working on like reconnecting truly with the deep core, with the pelvic floor, start strengthening. So it's kind of like a gradual process, but that first session is just basics that should have been done in the hospital that I just teach them how to do. And it really makes such a big difference for them when they come in the next time to see me because they already know, like they've already protected themselves and they're ready to go. Yeah. They're basically ready to now, like they're at their baseline and now they're ready to just get stronger.
Get more stuff,
So exactly. So even if people have had a C-section, it's one of those things that it is a major surgery. It's not treated as one, but it should be. And you have to give your body grace in order to recover. And just like any other surgery where we prescribe PT right away, it should be the same thing for moms, and even more so because now they have a baby that is basically growing in size every week, right? Yep. So you know, I just say it all the time, like moms need to be strong. Like if you're not strong as a mom, like you're going to be in a world of hurt because that baby is only getting bigger, only getting heavier. So like that 5 pound,
just more in your system,
that 5-6 pound baby is going to become a 10 pound baby, 15, 20 pounds. And now picture having to carry around a 15, 20 pound dumbbell everywhere, right?
Oh
so it's the same thing. So why are we not putting more attention towards like just women needing to take care of themselves and be strong to then take care of their babies, right?
Yeah, and we see a lot of the aftermath of things, which to me is why I get so passionate about things. And like if you knew a little bit more and maybe did a little bit more prep work or pre-work to things, then perhaps you wouldn't be in this sort of shape.
I love pre-work.
Yeah.
I love that word. Prehab is a thing too.
You have to. It's, it just saves you way more for later. And so I want to talk about your practice and how people find you, basically the steps into how somebody can find you and what your first visit looks like.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, different ways to find me. So I have a physical location. It's in Coral Gables.
Yay. We're neighbors.
Yeah, basically neighbors.
What's your place called?
So my place is called Rooted Wellness, Physical Therapy. Yeah. I'm the sole practitioner at the moment. We'll be going on maternity leave in a couple of months. So I am like in the process of looking for another pelvic floor therapist to join me. So I'm on Instagram. I am on Facebook.
You have a website.
I do have a website, and I make it very easy to basically find me, to schedule an appointment just online. I'm really easy to reach via email. I do answer phones, but I tell people give me a second because since I'm alone, if I'm treating somebody, I'm not answering the phone. So yeah, that's how to find me. And I do have some people that try to pop in sometimes to see me, but again, I work alone and I might not always be there too. So, definitely a heads up is always good. And then the first session just depends on what it is that, people are coming in for. So if it's for pregnancy, usually I have people fill out a couple forms beforehand because I really pride myself in people coming in for that first hour. It is an evaluation, but I try to make it pretty quick so that the rest can just be treatment and I basically can send you home with things to do already. Like I kind of pride myself on that because I know moms are busy. I know that, I'm even happy that they're coming in for themselves for this time. So I try to make the most out of that time for people.
That's awesome.
So yeah. And usually I tell people this all the time as a warning. Usually that first session, whether it's pregnancy, postpartum, or just somebody wanting to learn about the pelvic floor, it takes me usually longer than an hour. At this point, I should make an hour and a half, officially, because it's usually an hour and a half, and I just treat it as an hour. So yeah, that first session is usually pretty long. It's a lot of education. It's a lot of information,
and assessments.
It's a lot of learning, both me for you, and then you just learning for yourself. And then, if you need an internal pelvic floor assessment, that's its whole extra thing there. It's actually very quick. It takes 5 minutes, but we have to prep for it. We have to talk about it. And then from there, we run into treatment already in that first session. I leave people with things to do. Yeah, I have a portal that I give people videos and exercises on. So I really try my best to make it something where they go home, they feel empowered to start working on this. And then basically we check in. Yeah, we check in, every 2 weeks. It depends on the issue. But that's for that. And then if it's for birth preparation, again, it's basically an hour long. I usually encourage the husbands to come along. But I will say for birth prep, I do usually travel to moms' houses because at that point, they just don't even want. Yeah, I do travel to people's houses. Wow. And that's one of the most common ones, either that or then the early C-section session, because it's those moments where you just don't want to leave the house. You really don't. So I come to them. I have my treatment table. I have a little bag of all my things. I do stick my models in there, so I do bring my models because I feel lost. Today, I feel lost without my models. So I do shove them in there. I look like a crazy person, but it's fine.
Maybe we'll have the next one, and we'll have something really specific to talk about.
Yeah, I wish I could have brought my models and just set them up here.
We'll have to do a show and tell because this is really important.
Yeah, they're both different. One has the muscles, and the other one you can kind of move it so that you can see the way the pelvis moves, which
People
is great.
have to see this sphincters and slings, man.
It's like, just look up a picture if you don't know what it looks like. It'll blow your mind. Like the pelvic floor is
model's
great.
very, you know.
It's very specific. Yeah, it's very specific. It leaves nothing to the imagination. And that is that you didn't see it with like, I have a bladder and like organs to put in there. I just take it out. So because like when I travel, I'm just going to lose it all. But yeah, you didn't even see it as full form.
Oh my gosh.
It's even bigger than that usually. So yeah, we gotta bring it in here at some point. But
well, this is so great. Thank you so much. And we're gonna link all of your information in the videos and all that, and on Instagram and Facebook. So thank you for being here.
No, thank you for having me. This is great.
Yes. So thank you guys for being here. And that's it.